Dorks, it is the Turtle Dork back with another list for you today. So the one I'm going to give you for today is the most disappointing and worst of movies. Now I didn't do this last year because I normally don't like putting out like the worst of list. Because for me personally, I kind of like just to celebrate films, and me also being like an aspiring filmmaker and having made smaller films, short films before, I know how difficult and how hard it is to make a movie. So I never kind of want to shit on a movie or a filmmaker, but I do think it is important to kind of point out what is bad so we can kind of go in a different directions, although bad movies are always going to be made. So let's start with my number 10. Now, before I start, I actually want to say on the bottom half of this list, these are my most disappointing films. So I would say what I have 10 through 7 are my most disappointing, and then 6 to 1 are like the movies I just thought was just like some of the worst films I saw this year. So 7 will be my most disappointed film. So I just kind of combined everything into one. So with that being said, I'm gonna say my number 10 was the film Detroit, directed by Kathryn Bigelow. This had an all-star cast, but for some reason this movie just didn't really resonate in the way that I wanted it to. Last year, this was like one of my top films for the summer. We do like the top films of the summer, and Detroit was one of my most anticipated movies coming in the summer of 2017. But for whatever reason, to me, this film just didn't feel like it had a focus. There wasn't, I think with a movie like this, when you're telling all these different stories from different points of views, there's a delicate balance that you have to have. And for whatever reason, for me personally, I just think that Kathryn Bigelow didn't really have a handle in how she kind of approached and told these different type of stories. So I don't know, it just didn't really feel focused, and for me it just didn't work. It was a movie that it kind of conjured up some really weird and angry and frustrating feelings to see the story, especially knowing when this happened and where we are today, socially dealing with like race relations and stuff like that. So I thought it was a very important story to tell because I never even knew about these riots that happened in Detroit. But unfortunately, the movie just didn't really resonate with me the way that I wanted it to. So my number 10, as far as most disappointed, is Detroit. Number 9 for me, as far as my most disappointed film of 2017, would be Justice League. Now, I have to say, I did enjoy my experience watching this in the theater. But upon, after sitting with this movie for a little bit, I just kind of realized that it didn't really hit me in the way that some of the other films in the superhero genre and even in the DCEU, when we got Wonder Woman just, 6 months earlier or so. So, I don't know, it didn't really hit me in that way that I thought it would. Now, I am one of the defenders of Batman v Superman. I really like that movie. I like the deconstruction of the superhero. I like some of the things they were really trying to explore with that film. More so with the ultimate cut, I thought really worked. But with this film, I just felt like they just kind of wiped all that stuff away, and they just really went for the popcorn aspect of this film, and a lot of it really didn't. It really didn't live up to, I think, a lot of people's expectations of what they wanted for a Justice League movie, and that you could definitely see that from the box office results as well. People just weren't into seeing this film, or they didn't really conjure up the buzz to check this movie out. So unfortunately, and I think it also fails from having the vision of two different directors. I mean, you really can't talk about this film without talking about the production of this film. So you have to, of course, you have to talk about Zack Snyder, and of course the tragedy of why he had to leave the production of this movie, and then Joss Whedon coming in, and he was originally doing some rewrites, and then we also kind of know with WB and the studio, and I mean, we're hearing all these different stories and whatnot, but I think there is a changing of the guard with some of these DC films, and I think with some of the slate that we have coming up with Aquaman, with Shazam, with Wonder Woman 2, I think they all should live within the same universe but be their own separate stories. I think that's the direction the DCU, whatever you want to call it, needs to go. But unfortunately, with this movie, I felt like hopefully this was the final misstep in the DC cinematic universe. Next up on my list at number 8 is Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Now this was a highly disappointed film for me because for my most anticipated films of 2017, I think I had this as like number 6 because I just absolutely love the first Kingsman film. Unfortunately, this film did not hit in any way for me. I think it was a little bit too much excess with what Matthew Vaughn was giving us with this film, and not enough of some of those character moments and some of the way he was able to kind of combine kind of the absurd action with a lot of very good character development and character interactions with like Eggsy and some of the other characters from the first film. And he was able to brilliantly do that with Kick-Ass and the first Kingsman. Unfortunately, with this film, he just I don't know what happened with this. I don't know if he just had too much money, if the studio had too much input. I mean, the action is great. I thought the action was really good. It was flashy. That opening car chase sequence is one of the best sequences. It didn't make my top 10 as far as scenes, but it is phenomenally shot. And that is one of the things that I love about Matthew Vaughn, is how he's able to kind of bring in kind of like this new and different style of action as far as like the way he constructs these sequences and the way he shoots these sequences. But unfortunately, it was just too much. A lot of excess and just not enough story. And unfortunately, I felt the story was there. They just couldn't execute it in the way that I thought that they could. So, most disappointed, number 8, Kingsman: The Golden Circle. And at number 7, this is my most disappointed film of 2017, and that is The Fate of the Furious. Okay, if you've followed me on Twitter, on Facebook, or Letterboxd, or wherever on any of the social medias, you know how much of a fan that I am of the Fast and Furious franchise. And I felt like, starting with the last movie with Furious 7, they started to really kind of make some really missteps that didn't really go in the way that I wanted to see the franchise go. And unfortunately, this is my belief and what I think is happening. Yes, these movies, to a lot of people, to the masses, can be looked at as quote-unquote dumb fun. But I enjoy the character aspects of this film. I enjoy the family dynamic of it. But I think that this movie suffers from the loss of Justin Lin and the loss of Paul Walker. I think the loss of Paul Walker during the production of Furious 7 really was a turning point for this franchise, and I don't think they're able to kind of recapture the magic that they once had with these films. Justin Lin, to me, was a person that kind of reignited this franchise. Of course, he started with Tokyo Drift, and then he kind of brought back the original cast with Fast and Furious, and then Fast 5 was kind of like the staple, the turning point that really brought in a new audience to really kind of take this franchise to a different level, as far as like with fan response, critical response, and box office wise as well. So I give Justin Lin a lot of credit, and I think Justin Lin really had a handle on combining some of the outrageousness of the franchise, but yet keeping the heart of who these characters are, and keeping what we love as an audience together with this franchise. Unfortunately, when James Wan and now F. Gary Gray, it just feels like they're kind of maybe kind of listening to what maybe some of the fan base is saying about this film as far as like it being dumb fun, and I think they're kind of getting away from what made this franchise special. There were just way too many missteps with the narrative, bringing Jason Statham's character back and not really leaving a lot of unanswered questions as far as like his involvement in the death of Han, and really just trying to build towards kind of this spin-off film with The Rock and Jason Statham. I think it felt like the studio was more interested in doing that as opposed to really kind of following the characters and the stories that they have built with the previous films. So it's kind of heartbreaking to me. It's unfortunate because I was such a huge fan of this franchise, and with one film, this film, Fate of the Furious, it has really just kind of soured any anticipation that I have for any future films. The only thing that could probably get me back on board is if Justin Lin returns to this franchise, because I think he's the only person that really has a handle on how to really in what direction this franchise needs to go to really kind of end it on a high note. Alright, so number 6, and then we're getting into probably some of the worst films I've seen this year. So starting with number 6, this is The Dark Tower. Now, I wasn't really expecting a lot, but the trailer really kind of caught my eye, and I really wanted to see Idris Elba have a franchise, that he could have a starring role in a franchise, and I thought that this could have been the film, but unfortunately this definitely wasn't it. I don't know, to me, I thought, now I'm not too familiar with the Stephen King novels and these books and whatnot as far as The Dark Tower, but to me, Matthew McConaughey just felt like he just walked off the set of his Lincoln commercials as the Man in Black. I think they focused on the kid, I can't remember his name, where I felt like the focus should have been on the gunslinger played by Idris Elba. And again, from what I understand, this is supposed to be an epic story, especially coming from the Stephen King novels. And for this movie to have a runtime of basically 90 minutes, I don't know what the studios were thinking about putting this film out. Especially if this is not the movie that the fans were asking for. Why even make this film? So yeah, this was just this just did not work in any way. So my next one, at number 5, I have A Bad Mom's Christmas. Now, I kind of had expectations for this, kind of watching the trailer for it, because the trailer was hilarious, and I thought that this could have been the second funniest film behind Girls Trip. And I went to go see this film, and I could not wait to leave the theater. It was just absolutely atrocious. None of the comedy hits. I think bringing in the moms of the moms worked in some ways, but it just kind of fell into a lot of the comedic conventions that we see in some of these kind of R-rated comedies. To me, I think this sequel was made because, from what I hear, I haven't seen the first Bad Moms, but I heard that movie was really, really funny. And we say this a lot of times, like when you have chemistry between a cast, it's always nice to make these sequels because the audience just likes to spend time with these characters. So to have these characters come back, and Catherine Hahn, to me, was a standout. I'm pretty sure she was funny in the first film, and she was the highlight of this film. Unfortunately, the story, the comedy, and bringing in all these extra characters like Susan Sarandon and I think Cheryl Hines, I think their name was, they just did not work at all. And yeah, I just could not wait to leave the theater watching this film, A Bad Mom's Christmas. So unfortunately, one of the worst of the year. And at number 4, I have Baywatch. Now, I just talked about A Bad Mom's Christmas. This is the worst comedy of the year. This worked on no levels at all. And of course, watching some of the publicity and some of the trailers for this film, you can definitely feel that they were trying to go for that 21-22 Jump Street vibe, and really kind of lampooning a lot of these 80s and 90s TV shows. And I don't know, for some reason Baywatch in and of itself already felt like it was lampooning itself. So to try to come back and do a movie about that, it just seemed like it just didn't work. And a lot of the comedy I just thought was really just, they were trying to be way too raunchy and way too crude, and way too shocking just for the sake of doing that. And the comedy just wasn't smart in the way that Lord and Miller were able to kind of, bring the raunchiness, but also make the comedy very, very smart and relevant for the times. But unfortunately, this movie just drops the ball on every level when it comes to that, and it just feels like they're trying to copy or catch up to something that's better, that's way better than this. And unfortunately, this just did not work. So yeah, the worst comedy of the year, and my fourth worst film of the year, Baywatch. So number 3 for me is The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise. Yes, this movie, the more I think about this movie, the more it just kind of just makes me mad. Because I think the first mistake that they made with this movie is they're trying to put the cart before the horse as far as like trying to build out a cinematic universe. And I think what you really need to do is just focus on one film and make that film great. And then I think this film suffers from a tonal identity. It has an identity crisis with its tone. It's kind of schizo all over the place. Like 1 minute it wants to be an action film, 1 minute it wants to be a horror film, the next minute it wants to be a comedy. And none of it works. None of it works. I think Tom Cruise is wildly miscast in this film. He doesn't work in any level. And I love Tom Cruise in the majority of the stuff that he's in, but he is just dull going through this film. And again, like I said, just trying to cram in and stuff so much to build out a universe with one film. You take the focus off the movie that you're trying to tell in and of itself. I thought the only highlight of this movie was Sophia Boutella, and then they kind of sidelined her. And I don't know. It's just unfortunate, because I think the Universal monster movies, you really could have built a pretty incredible cinematic universe with all of these characters. But unfortunately, it looks like that's kind of dead in the water now. And yeah, it's probably for a good reason. So yeah, number 3, The Mummy. And number 2 on my list is Alien Covenant. Now, this film, I don't even know what to say about this film. I've seen this movie once, and that was in the theater, and I haven't watched it since. And I think what Ridley Scott was doing is that I think he kind of, to me, it just felt like he kind of duped the studio. He said, you know what, yeah, I'm going to make an alien movie. And then he goes and makes this movie about, David and the idea of, the AI and, what it means to be human and all these different things. And he wants to approach a lot of different theories, but he's trying to cram it into what the audience really wanted, which was an alien film. And he basically didn't give the audience what they were expected to see, especially the way this movie was marketed. And coming off Prometheus, I know Prometheus was mixed, and I'm kind of in the middle with Prometheus. I've gone back and rewatched it, and I like it a lot better. And again, I like some of the themes and some of the questions that it asked, and I thought that we would kind of continue that going into Prometheus. And then you just have a bunch of characters that are just doing some of the most idiotic stuff. And I just thought Ridley Scott was above this. The only character that I really liked in this movie was Danny McBride. And even he had some questionable choices in this film. The movie is just, and ultimately the movie is just boring and dull, and it's not a movie that I think anybody would want to revisit. There are fans of this movie, and more power to you if you find enjoyment in this film, if you find something that really kind of resonates with you with this film. But I gotta say, personally, for me, I have no interest in ever watching this movie ever again. And my number 1 worst film of 2017 is, yes, you have guessed it, it is my worst, it is your worst, you know it, stop denying it, Transformers: The Last Night. I went into this film not even expecting anything. I went into this film knowing it was going to be bad, hoping that if I went in with basically not just lowered expectations, but zero expectations, that maybe I can find some type of enjoyment out of it. I won't be as frustrated as I was with the fourth film, with Age of Extinction, when I was extremely let down because it was promising that the first trilogy has ended, and then we're bringing in Mark Wahlberg, and we're changing the story, and maybe that this is going to be the turn, the changing of the tide. And Age of Extinction came out, and it was just utter garbage, and that was just a huge disappointment for me because I thought, and maybe that was my fault for thinking that it would be any different. So after that, going into this one, knew it would be bad, and I actually liked the trailer. The trailer is actually pretty good, but at this point, all the goodwill that we've had, if there was any goodwill with Transformers, is just all been just flushed down the toilet. So I think anybody that went to this movie wasn't really expecting anything good, and going into this, it was probably worse than I could expect. The way he treats some of these characters, and we're talking about some of Hollywood's elite actors. Anthony Hopkins just comes off as a bumbling fool. It's Stanley Tucci. Oh my God, he is Stanley Tucci. When this movie starts, he's playing Merlin because we start back in the Arthurian era, and once the jokes start in like the first minute of this film, you're just like, oh Jesus, what am I getting myself into? And it's just hot garbage. It really is. I just don't expect anything from this franchise. I pray that Michael Bay is done with these movies. I'm actually interested in Bumblebee because we have a different director, and I'm hoping that they use this to kind of jumpstart a reboot. But outside of that, if they are going to continue this timeline with the Michael Bay films, with another film in this particular universe, y'all can have that. I'm done. This is a dead franchise to me. Dead. So yes, that is my number one worst film of 2017. Shocker. Real shocker. Anyway, let me know what you thought of my personal worst disappointed list of 2017, and go ahead and comment below. Let me know what some of your most disappointed and worst films of 2017 are. And as always, follow my other dorks at MouthDork, at TheDiscoDork, and at SidewalkSiren. And as for me, I am the TurtleDork, and with that, I'm out.